Hi everyone, and welcome back. We're continuing on from the Donald Shoup video to talk a little bit more about parking zoning bylaws. And I thought I'd just give you this example of how these zoning bylaws can lead to quite interesting results. I'm here in an inner suburb of Melbourne, and you can see here we are. We've taken away an on-street car parking space to allow access to this driveway. And if we go outside and have a bit of a look around, you can see, oh yeah, it's a bit busy down here. There's not a huge amount of parking available, but a lot of the space has been used up to provide access. And if you actually look inside this garage, you'll notice that there's a very, very expensive car parking stacker technology. These things cost quite a lot of money. But the weird thing is we've taken space that could otherwise be used for a bedroom and we've built this parking stacker which means that we now get to have two cars in this space. But strangely enough, we've then had to take away at least one space on the street to allow us to provide space to get in and out of this spot. So the net result is that we've lost one bedroom from this house and we've taken away one on-street parking space to provide access to this garage, and then we've provided two parking spaces in this garage. So the net result is that we've gained one parking space and lost one bedroom. So yeah, not a great result, but these are some of the weird things that potentially come out of these zoning bylaws, and some of the things that Donald Shoup has been talking about in the context of the high cost of free parking. Anyway, Shoup has sort of led to this really interesting movement called the Shoupistas. I definitely recommend jumping on board their Facebook and having a bit of a look. Some quite entertaining stuff about how parking policy and zoning bylaws can be a little bit nonsensical. Is over 50% of the entire Bunker Hill area being used for parking lots in the 50s and 60s a good result? No, probably not, because Bunker Hill was clearly close enough to downtown Los Angeles that people could walk from Bunker Hill to Los Angeles. And would you rather use that space to have people's houses and then have them walk to Los Angeles? Or would you rather have that space used for people to drive to from much, much further out and then walk to Bunker Hill, to Los Angeles? It doesn't make a huge amount of sense to be putting up a whole load of parking spot in somewhere that's downtown when you could be having a walkable neighbourhood. Moving back to the main topic though, however, of parking, and one of the things that you do see possibly used is the use of parking sharing to reduce the amount of parking that might be needed in a particular development. So here's this lovely graph that shows some results of some surveys that have gone into looking at how much space is used for residential parking during the course of the day and other land uses. So you can see, as you'd expect, the residential one goes down during the middle of the day as people go to work. The office one goes up in the middle of the day as people go to work. So there's a whole lot of residential parking that isn't being used and a whole lot of office parking that is being used in around noon. And then towards the end of the day, people leave their offices, so there's a whole lot of parking that isn't needed there. And then people start going out to restaurants and retail and things like that. And so the idea is that if you combined all of these on a site, you might actually be able to have a parking sharing going on. So here's an example again from the City of Toronto bylaws. So we're looking at an adult education school uses 100% of its parking needs to provide 100% of its parking during the day. And then in the evening, only needs to provide 25% of its parking, presumably for cleaners and so on and so forth. Whereas an amusement arcade has the other thing, so it doesn't need to provide very much parking in the morning because no one's going to go to an amusement arcade in the morning, but would need to provide all of its parking in the evening. So if you had an amusement arcade and an adult education facility on the same site, you might be able to share some of their parking between them, although by the looks of things it's going to be the PM peak where both of those land uses are at 100%, but it's going to drive things, so you might not actually get that. But if you get a different set of land uses and are able to do that in the zoning bylaw, you'll get an ability to reduce parking, as has been done in this example, again from Toronto. So if you look closely at the residential visitor, which is in this line here, there is a requirement under the zoning bylaw for 18 spaces, but you only need to provide 10% in the morning, so 2 spaces, and 100% in the evening, so 18 spaces in the evening. But the office is the other way around and only needs to provide 6 spaces all up, and all of them need to be provided in the morning, but none in the evening. And so it's actually the evening that drives the entire parking requirement for this entire site. 31 spaces are required in the evening, whereas if we didn't have parking sharing, we'd have 37 spaces required. So that's how that tends to work in a zoning bylaw situation. Zoning bylaws will also have parking requirements for other types of parking, such as bicycle parking. So here we are again in Toronto, because I'm familiar with it. So this particular site requires 0.9 spaces per dwelling unit for bicycle parking, and then there's also a requirement for visitor spacing for bicycles. So that's going to be a hoop on the side of the street, presumably. And then, yeah, there's even more requirements and details about how big these spaces should be, whether they're vertical or... again, this is all detailed, and that's a lot of what this zoning bylaw stuff is about.